be one hour of silence. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, I hate to leave you, baby. I don't mean baby. You know I love you so. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say good night, sweetheart. Good night. Now your mother and your father won't like it if I stay too long. One kiss in the dark and I'll be going. You know I hate to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say good night, sweetheart. Good night. Good night, sweetheart. Good night. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, sweetheart. Look at me, I'm a train, I'm a track, I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, yeah. Look at me, got a load on my back, I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, yeah. Look at me, I'm not somewhere, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, yeah. Look at me, I'm not somewhere, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, yeah. Been a hard day, it has been a hard day, it has been a hard day, it has. I'm a chicken train, I'm a chicken train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, chicken train, yeah. Look at me, train. Look at him, train, he's a train. In a life that's long and hard, I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, yeah. Going down to the breaker's yard, I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, yeah. Been a hard day, it has been a hard day, it has been a hard day, it has. I'm a chicken train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, I'm a chicken train, I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken 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 train. I'm a chicken train. Chicken, 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 chicken train. Chicken, 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 chicken train. Train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken, chicken train. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken, chicken train. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken, chicken train. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken, chicken train. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a chicken train. I'm a chicken train, I'm a chicken train. Come, They see her sitting there across the way. She don't got a lot to say, but there's something about her, and you don't know why, but you're dying to try. You wanna kiss the girl. Yes, you want her. Look at her, you know you do. Possible she wants you to, but there's one way to ask her. It don't take a word, not a single word. Go on and kiss the girl. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, my oh my. Look like the boy too shy, ain't gonna kiss the girl. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, ain't that sad? Ain't it a shame? Too bad he gonna miss the girl. Now's your moment, floating in a blue lagoon. Boy, you better do it soon, your time will be better. She don't say a word, she won't say a word until you kiss the girl. Go kiss the girl. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, don't be scared, you've got the mood prepared. Go on and kiss the girl. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, don't stop now, don't try to hide it. How you wanna kiss the girl. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, float along and listen to the song. The song say, kiss the girl. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, music play, do up the music, say you wanna kiss the girl. You've got to kiss the girl. You wanna kiss the girl. Go on and kiss the girl. Somebody's monkey by the side of the road. Somebody's pussy who forgot his highway coat. Someone's favorite feline who ran clean out of luck when he ran onto the road and tried to argue with a truck.
Yesterday he purred and played in his pussy paradise, decapitating Tweety birds and masticating mice. Now he's just 6 pounds of raw red mince.
That don't sound very nice. He's nobody's monkey now. Oh, you who love your pussy, be sure to keep him in. Don't let him argue with the truck. The truck is bound to win. And out upon the busy road, don't let him play and frolic. If you do, I'm warning you, it might be catastrophic.
If you let him play on the roadway, I'm afraid that will be that. There will be one last despairing meow and a kind of squelching splut. He will be slightly dead
and very, very flat. Kind Jesus, help me to see the morning light of one more day. But if I should die before I wake, I pray my soul to take. Can you feel the hearts of the children aching for home, for something of their very own, reaching hands with nothing to hold on to, but hope for a better day. A better day. Crying, Jesus, help me to feel the love again in my own land. But if unknown roads lead away from home, give me loving arms away from harm. Oh, la da da dom, la da da dom, whoa, do do da da dom. Can you hear the voice of the children softly pleading for silence in their shattered world? Angry guns preach a gospel full of hate, blood of the innocent on their hands. Crying, Jesus, help me to feel the sun again upon my face. For when darkness clears, I know you're near, bringing peace again. Dolly Juliette, Svejje molitve. Can you hear the prayer of the children?
All the blacksmith quartet we guarding on San Berto, and first he won my heart. He wrote me a letter, and his hand, and he shines so bright till clever. He makes a Spartan flag all around his middle. For the blacksmith quartet we guarding on San Berto, and first he won my heart. He wrote me a letter. For the blacksmith quartet we guarding on San Berto, and first he won my heart. He wrote me a letter, and his hand, he shines so bright in the band. He makes a Spartan flag all around his middle.
thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. As part of our Leadership Week presentations, it's my honour to welcome Dame Susan Devoy to the stage this morning, one of the true legends of New Zealand sport. Dame Susan is a former world squash champion, winning the world title 4 times, dominating the sport in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Other than winning the World Open on 4 occasions and the coveted British Open Squash Championships 8 times, she also retired with a number of other titles: the Australian, British, French, Hong Kong, Irish, New Zealand, Scottish, Swedish and world squash titles at the age in 1992 when she retired. Since her squash career finished, Dame Susan has held numerous positions, including being chair of the Hellberg Trust for 12 years. She is currently the patron of the Crippled Children's Society, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, for which she walked the length of New Zealand in 1988 and raised $500,000, is patron of Squash New Zealand and the Tourette's Association. From 2000 to 2006, Dame Susan was the Chief Executive Officer and Chair of Sport Bay of Plenty, and served as a member of the Auckland District Health Board, and was a member of the board for the Health Promotion Agency and the chairperson of the BNZ Partners in Tauranga from 2011 to 2013. In 1986, Dame Susan was awarded the Order of the British Empire, which was followed by a CBE in 1993, and was named New Zealand Sportsperson and Sportswoman of the Year award in 1985. In 1998, she became a Dame Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, the youngest New Zealander since Sir Edmund Hillary to receive a knighthood. In March 2013, Dame Susan was appointed to the position of Race Relations Commissioner for New Zealand. She is married to John Oakley and is a mother to 4 sons who have all been through Tauranga Boys College. One of the things that struck me from Dame Susan's career in squash was her single-minded determination to win, at times ruthless attitude, all great qualities in sports people, and those championships that she won throughout her career were well earned at a time when New Zealand squash was at the forefront of international sport. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dame Susan Devoy to the lectern this morning.
Nā mihi nui, nā mihi mahana kia koutou katoa. Kia ora to the Rector for that very kind and true introduction. It's great to be here, sort of. When Mr King approached one of my colleagues where I work at the Human Rights Commission and said, would you be interested in going to talk to the students at Palmerston North Boys High School as part of Sir Peter Blake Leadership Week, I thought to myself, well, I've got 4 sons, they're 21, 20, 19 and 17, and they don't listen to a word I say, so why on earth would 1,700 boys be interested in listening to what I have to say today? But it's fantastic to be here and to acknowledge that you've had a number of speakers prior to me. Willie Apiata is a hard act to follow, and you've got other speakers coming, but I do have a unique perspective that I come from a female's point of view. Although I feel very well qualified to talk about men, because I've got 6 brothers and no sisters, and now I've got 4 sons and no daughters, so I've been punished for all the terrible things I've said about men in my life. But, you know, my sporting career, I suppose, has been documented, and for some of you, I suppose, as I stand here, you might find it hard to believe that I was a world squash champion. In fact, I was ranked number 1 in the world from the age of 20 to when I retired, and when I was 29. As I said, I was the youngest of 7 children. I grew up in a very busy sporting household. I broke a couple of arms playing rugby with my brothers. I wasn't allowed to play cricket because I didn't bowl fast or straight enough. But we became involved in squash as a family, and I suppose that's where I came into my own, because as a youngster I had to travel around from tournament to tournament to tournament with them, and I filled my time in by jumping on the squash court and hitting millions and millions of squash balls. So, you know, it was something that I enjoyed very early on in life. I was relatively good at it, and I knew by the time I hit high school that I wanted to be a world champion. It's not really as simple as that, of course. And what I say to people is, I was passionate about what I did. And you hear a lot of people say they're passionate about something, but passion's not just about loving something, actually. Passion's about being able to make just about every single sacrifice you have to make in order to achieve your goals, whatever they are. So, even as a person at a high school, I went to a all-girls Catholic school. I was taught by nuns. I felt rather sort of isolated, I suppose, or excluded in some ways, because whilst everyone was, either partying or doing the social things and whatever, I was always playing squash and training, because, that's really what I did. Was my focus was on knowing that as much as I loved competing and winning, I loved training as well. And that's the really difference, that, being able to actually put in those hard hours of slog, putting yourself in the pain box regularly, the monotony of actually doing the same drills over and over and over, and that was really what, how much I loved it. I was 17 in my last year at high school, and I came home one day from a squash tournament, and I hadn't done an assignment, and one of the nuns that taught me said, "Susan, come on, are you more interested in playing squash or being at school?" And I thought, "Oh, what a dumb question, actually." So I got up right at that moment, packed my bags and left school. The only problem was I was too scared to tell my parents that I'd left school. So for 3 weeks I got dressed in my school uniform and hid under the house until they'd gone to work. But finally, I was sort of sprung, I suppose, and my father, being the youngest of 7 children, was devastated that his only daughter was not going to pursue a tertiary career and get go to university and be a doctor or dentist or something like that or whatever. So I got my first job as a builder's labourer on a building site, basically organising the smoko and running around after the 60 guys that were part of the builders gang. Earned enough money to go on my first trip to the UK. So I was 17. My youngest is 17 in year 12 at Tauranga Boys College. He can hardly struggle to get out of bed and get to school on time. We only live 200 metres from the school. So I look back now and think that, 17 going to the UK. So I thought going to Heathrow was a bit like catching the bus from Rotorua to Auckland, and I went over there with sort of grand illusions of being an overnight success, but the reality was very different. I was incredibly homesick. We didn't have Skype or texting or anything like that. We had to write letters, and by the time you got the news, they were a year old. Couldn't afford a phone call, it was too expensive. So there was an awful amount of isolation. I bludged my way from tournament to tournament, finding places to stay. Sometimes once I slept in a train station. I think I got mugged, but he didn't realise I had 6 brothers, so he came off a lot worse than I did. And there was a whole lot of things, and it wasn't the most fantastic years. It wasn't until a little while later that I got back to New Zealand that I realised that my brothers had all got together, my family, and had paid for my mother to fly over to France to stay with my brother who lived in France at the time. My mother had never even been on an aeroplane or overseas, and what they'd done for that was to have a safety net there for me, that if it all turned terribly pear-shaped, all turned to custard, something terribly went wrong, that there was someone there. But, I never even saw and whatever. They just made me sort of suffer and go through all of that. But it made me incredibly tough, and the rest we say is history. So I won my first British Open, which is the equivalent of the World Champs, or squash's version of Wimbledon without the prize money, I might say, when I was 20. And I remember it very vividly. I've won numerous titles, and in those 10 years I remember my first very clearly and possibly my last. You remember your first because it's the, I suppose, the ultimate achievement of achieving your goal, That's what I set out to do, to be the very best in the world, and I did that. And I remember not long before the tournament was coming up, Ross Norman, who was my male contemporary at squash, New Zealand's #1 player, and a really good player at that too, rang me with a week or so before the British Open was to start and said, "Susan, there's a new club opening up in London. We've all been invited to the opening party. Are you interested in coming?" And I thought, I don't know, I'll think about it. Anyway, I went back to him a few days later and I said, "Ross, I've decided I'm not going to go. I've got my biggest tournament of my life coming up in a week's time." And he said, "Yes, but so have I." I said, "Yes, but Ross, I've got a chance of winning. You haven't got a hope in hell." And so I went on to win my first British Open, and life does change immediately when you become the best in the world at something. I was this young girl from Rotorua, who'd gone on to achieve something on a world scale. I suddenly had, sponsorship. Honda gave me a car. All sorts of things happened. But the reality is, like most things, if you think it's hard getting there, well, it's a hell of a lot harder staying there at the top, I can tell you. But for me, The three things that I've always done in my life that have stood me in really good stead and continue to do so regardless of what I do, and I've been asked a number of times, I suppose, what is the secret to success? For me personally, and for just about everyone doing whatever you do, it's three things. It's hard work. There is no substitute for anything other than hard work. You know, you may have all the skill in the world, you may have all of the raw talent, but at the end of the day, you know, there is no substitute for putting in the hard yards. That's really important. Discipline. You know, it's really, really hard. I mean, you've got to stay continuously focused on what you're trying to achieve and understand that, you know, there's going to be bumps and curves along the way, so you have to be incredibly disciplined. And then the third most important thing, I think, in anything that you do, and which is really important for the theme of this week is Believe You Can, is to have that self-belief. You know, because at the end of the day, that's what's really going to get you through the tough times. That's what's really going to get you through when people are, you know, offering you advice or questioning you or criticising you or doing whatever. You actually have to really, really, really believe that you can. For me, my sporting career, you know, I had retired long before you were a twinkle even in your parents' eyes. So, you know, I've done an extraordinary amount of things since then. I retired when I was 29. I wanted to retire on top, and I did. I was the world champion, the British champion. You know, I'd been ranked number one for nearly 9 years. At the end of the day, I knew that the fire in my belly had gone out. So I prided myself on always working extremely hard, much harder than any of my peers, because the self-belief is not something that's an arrogance or an overconfidence. The self-belief comes from every time I walked on that squash court, I knew that I had done everything humanly possible to win, and barring illness or injury, I would. And 99% of the time I did, you know, because no one is unbeatable. But that was really what stood me in good stead. So I retired when I was 29. If someone had said to me, hey Susan, in 5 years' time you're going to have 4 boys under 5 years, well, I probably would have said, oh, I might keep playing squash for another 2 and only have a couple of children. But the reality is, you know, that was my life, and I've done a whole lot of different things yet. I've been truly blessed with wonderful opportunities that have come my way in my sporting career. You know, I've been to Buckingham Palace and received one of my Queen's Honours. I've met Nelson Mandela. I've met President Bill Clinton. I've been to places and travelled in opportunities that I never would have thought possible. They don't come through just good luck. They come through a lot of, you know, I say the harder you work, the luckier you get. Really, that is my motto. And so it was mentioned by the rector that I walked the length of New Zealand in 1988 to raise money for muscular dystrophy. 1988 is a long time ago. $500,000 would be worth quite a significant amount these days, but that altered and, I suppose, changed the course of the rest of my life, and that I grew up with a real sense from my parents of social responsibility. They teach the boys at Tauranga Boys to be good men, and, you know, for me it's really about, my father taught me 2 things as I was growing up. Firstly, Susan, never forget where you came from. And secondly, never forget the people that have helped you along the way. And I think those are really good values to live by, guys, because, you know, one day in your life you'll have these light bulb moments when you'll realise that there was a teacher, a mentor, a sports coach, even heaven forbid your own parents, you know, who actually gave you some really, really good pearls of wisdom and some advice that helped you along the way. And the other thing is, be really nice to the people on the way up, because you might meet them on the way down as well. So those are really good things to live your life by. You know, I have 4 sons, as I said. Probably and possibly the most challenging role that any of us have in life, and you'll get to understand that a few years down the track. My children have been blessed with my sporting genes. My husband thinks it's his, but, you know, it's not really quite the case. And the reality is they're also extraordinarily competitive, all of them actually. And I try to guide them through that process. I try not to be a pushy parent. I just try to instill them and say, make the most of the opportunities that are coming your way. You know, realise the potential that you've been born with and the gifts that you've been given, and for God's sake, use them, you know. And sometimes I do nag them, get off the couch and go training or do whatever. And they say, oh, it's all right for you, Mum, you know, you were a world champion, you know. And I said, yeah, and it just lay on the couch and it happened like that. You know, there's some sort of belief that I was born with some superior gene that made it really easy, but it's not. And you know what, so I say to my sons, my eldest son's in America in a college on a track and field scholarship in Rhode Island at Providence College. He met a teacher at Tauranga Boys College after the cross-country season one year. He enjoyed the cross-country, enjoyed running, enjoyed the trips away more, I think. And the teacher said to him, hey, Julian, I think you'd be a really good track runner. And I remember he said, oh, I don't really like running, sir. and he came and had a go, and that year won the 1500 metres New Zealand Boys Secondary Schools Champs after, I think, the second time only ever running on the track. He was scouted and now got a full scholarship over in the States. My second son's studying engineering at Canterbury University. My third son's about to go to college in America for a squash scholarship. Heavens knows how I do academically. It's been a torturous process to get him that far. And I know there are some people in the audience that know my son, so I can't lie about them being angels, because they're not. In fact, we had a farewell party on Saturday, and I was a bit gobsmacked to wake up in the morning to find that our couch had been put in the swimming pool. You know? I knew you'd laugh at that, but I didn't really see the funny side. You know, so I got these boys out, a little hungover, got them in their undies into our very, very cold swimming pool and said, well, if you put it there, then you have to get it out, you know, and that was really quite interesting. And then I have a 17 son, as I said, who's still, who's actually an under-17 boys squash champion. And why I mention that is, you know, guys, because it's really, really, really frustrating sometimes. And I didn't tell my boys that I was coming to talk to you at Palmerston North Boys High, because they would have rolled their eyes and said, poor fellows, having to listen to my mother nag them as well. But what I do want to say to you is that the world is full of opportunities and you need to make the most of them. You know, it's quite different these days. I mean, I think some kids, you know, my son has FOMO, the fear of missing out. You know, that whole screen time just about drives you, and if you just took a little bit more of that time and dedicated actually to doing it, something what you're actually good at. And at the end of this, just to say that, you know, I was very fortunate. You know, I didn't know what my life would be if I hadn't been successful on a sporting stage. I played a minority sport. I was very fortunate that I was a female in New Zealand when squash was in its boom time, so I was a big fish in a little pond. You know, what would I have done if I hadn't been successful, which is why, you know, I always encourage people to have a backup plan. Doesn't matter when you come to that plan, but it's not easy to always make a living out of sport, you know, and in times that can be really, really difficult. But what I say to people is that we can't all be the best in the world, you know, but we can always give our best. And to me, that's equally as important as being the best. Giving your best at whatever you choose to do is the most admirable thing that you can do, because you will never know what your potential is unless you give it your very, very best. So I have people that come to me who think their son or daughter might be a world squash champion, and I have to sort of, you know, pretend, well, that could be possible. But I know that they're probably never going to do, but they will become such a much better person by actually giving it their utmost and actually trying to reach their full potential and going on that journey of endeavouring how well you can be. So that's the most important thing, is to give your best. That's equal to being the best. And the other thing is to be really bold and courageous. You know, I now have probably one of the most contentious, controversial jobs in the world. When I retired in 1992, if someone had said to me, you're only going to have 4 sons, that you're going to be the Race Relations Commissioner of New Zealand, I would have laughed and said, well, I'll eat my hat, you know, whatever. But the reality is I do have a very important role as a public servant. I have an opportunity in my lifetime to leave a legacy, you know, to make a difference in our country and to what the future will be. And that's really important. But it's also a job that requires quite a lot of bravery and courage. And that's the other thing I would say to you. If you are good at something, if you are unique, or if you are different, or if you're special or whatever, it takes enormous courage to be able to stand up, to firstly be proud of yourself, to actually, you know, acknowledge and I suppose, we live in a culture, I suppose, where you might hear about the tall poppy, but it is quite difficult. You know, I know that my sons sometimes feel more embarrassed than crossing the stage to get an award. They'd rather just sit down there with the rest of you and actually not be stood out amongst the crowd. But you know, you need really be proud of what your achievements are, and that comes back to saying, you know, believe that you can. So, you know, I would say to you, the world is, as everyone has said, is full of amazing opportunities. You know, it's not always easy. There's going to be lots of challenges, and you're going to face a lot of adversity. You know, my life has not always been you know, I suppose, simple. I came into this role amongst some very strong criticism and a lot of scrutiny, and I continuously face that on a daily challenge. But at the end of the day, if what you do is what you believe in, and the belief that you can actually make a difference, and what you do is morally and ethically right at all times. I think that's what's really most important, is to be the best you can be and to be the best person that you can be. It's very sad, isn't it, that this week is about someone who's passed away, you know, someone in the prime of their life who had achieved such greatness and from a real tragedy was taken from us. And the last time I met Sir Peter Blake, I'll tell you this funny story, I was invited to a very posh function in Auckland a number of years ago. It was a World Leaders Conference, and there were 400 leaders from around the world were invited. I got the invitation, I went along, I was seated at the table with the late Sir Edmund Hillary and Lady Hillary, the late Sir Peter Blake and Lady Blake. I sat next to the President of Brazil and his wife. I sat right next to Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of the President. Not that I want to name drop, like a normal everyday Sunday night dinner, you know. And a couple of things struck me. Firstly, my husband wasn't invited. I'm a dame, you know. And if you're a sir, your wife is a lady. My husband doesn't have a title, but my friends call him Lady John. But he doesn't really see the funny side. So I thought, you know, gender inequality is still alive and well. And I was sitting there talking to Sir Peter, and I said, you know, I'd really like to meet President Clinton. You know, who could say in their life that they'd had the opportunity to meet the most powerful man in the entire world? And it wasn't the sort of function where you get up and say, "G'day Bill, I'm Susie from Rotorua," because the security was very intense. So I looked around for an opportunity and I saw the American ambassador, and we had met at Sir Edmund Hillary's 80th birthday. So he took me up to the President and he said, "Mr. President, this is Dame Susan Devoy. She is New Zealand's most prolific Olympic gold medalist." And I thought, oh, I've never won a gold medal in my life, and you know, what am I going to say, you see? And I don't think the gentleman had probably even heard about squash, so he turned around to me and very charismatically said, "Well, young lady," wasn't that young, "how many gold medals did you win?" I was so embarrassed and so nervous in meeting the President, I said 10. And I thought, oh, what's he going to say then? But very politely he said, "Well, you must actually be the world's most prolific Olympic gold medalist if you've won 10 gold medals." By that stage I was so embarrassed I crawled back on my hands and knees to into my table. But I suppose that's what I'm just trying to say, that my sporting achievements through my own hard work and endeavour have opened so many opportunities for me that as a youngster, as your age, sitting in a school hall, I would never have dreamed possible. I've been acknowledged by my peers, I've been acknowledged by my country, you know, I have a Queen's honour, and I thought, you know, I'm extraordinarily fortunate. But the reality is that all of you are fortunate and all of you have opportunities to be successful in whatever you try to do, and I just hope that you make the most of those opportunities. When I was flying down here yesterday, my ticket was booked through my office, and it comes out, my bookings are made with my title, Dame Susan Devoy. Not that I'm such a plonk, I go around expecting everyone to call me Dame Susan Devoy. And I couldn't get on the kiosks in Auckland. I got my ticket out, but something was wrong with it. I took it up to the desk. There was a young Indian woman at the counter, and she said, "Have you got some identification?" I got my passport out of my bag, and my passport doesn't say Dame Susan Devoy, it just says Susan Devoy. And she said, "What does Dame mean?" And I thought, oh, you know, how am I going to explain this? And I said, "Oh, it's my nickname." And she gave me a very strict telling off about using my nickname on official documents, especially the security of flying, and I was to never, ever do that again. So from today I've decided that I'm just going to be Susan Devoy, not Dame Susan Devoy. But I hope you have a great week. Enjoy the rest of the speakers, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you.
Just on behalf of the school, I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Devoy, for coming in this morning and sharing your experiences and knowledge with us. So here's just a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you, Dame Susan. Fantastic to hear from you. And also, gentlemen, it's a lot of the same messages we talk about, and having gone through your reports of late, and I've mentioned this maybe once or twice before, and far be it from me to repeat myself, but I will. It's frustrating when you do get some talented young men whose attitude grades reflect minimal or scant or perfunctory effort. And I had a number of conversations with young men yesterday who really now at the age where they can leave if they don't want to be here, but more frustrating when you see guys with a huge amount of potential and ability who are just wasting their time here. So I'll continue to have those conversations with various year groups over the coming days and then into next term, and it's really a chance for you when you get your reports to talk about some things with your parents and have a look at why you're here and the sort of effort you need to put in to get your academic qualifications, because you'll know the major focus that each and every one of you must have is to attain the best academic qualification you can. The world's changed in terms of what you can do once you leave school, and you know that NCA Level 2 at the very least is what you need as you go on out into the world. So those boys in the senior school in particular, those young men who've let themselves down on their reports, you've got half a year to make sure you can remedy that as you work towards those NCA examinations at the end of the year. We'll just make a quick presentation now to a young man who was competing in a World Language Championship. So in the 2015, the Vocabulary World Championships is a 10-day long online competition, and that's aimed at students who are studying languages. And this took place during May, started on Monday, May the 18th, and ended on Thursday the 28th. And of students at this school, Luke Just, studying Year 10 Japanese, achieved a silver award, which puts him in the top 5% of competitors from around the world. That's out of 300,000 students. So I'd like to invite Luke onto stage now to receive his certificate for that fabulous achievement. Luke. And that's a fantastic effort. As I said, 300,000 competitors from throughout the world, so well done to Luke in that regard. Super 8 football results, you'll be aware that the first 11 had had a draw and a win in their first two games of that tournament. They then beat Tauranga Boys College 1-0 yesterday to advance to the semi-finals, where they played New Plymouth Boys High School, a team that they'd beaten 2-0 in the recent exchange. So that match was 0-0 at the end of extra time, and New Plymouth won that on penalties, so they go through to the final. So our team, first 11 today, plays Hamilton Boys for third place, so we wish them all the best result for that. Gentlemen, just a reminder about Red Sox Day on Friday. As I've said, it is the closest you'll ever get to a Mufti Day here. We encourage you to do so. It's in recognition of not only Sir Peter Blake and everything he did for leadership, but also on the importance that leadership plays in this school, the leadership program, also the guests we've been fortunate enough to have join us this week. And so I encourage you to get out to the quad today and see those prefects and get that organised for Friday. It's day 3, absence notes to me. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Mr. Pinder.
When the night is calm and the land is dark and the moon is the only light you see, no, I won't be afraid, no, I won't be afraid, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me, stand by me, oh, stand by me, 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 stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, and the mountains
should crumble to the sea. I won't cry, no, I won't cry. I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. 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 Stand by me.